The Grand Assembly Hall was the largest structure ever built by any living species. It floated in the center of neutral space, a massive station shaped like a ring, covered in gold and white metal that glowed softly under the light of 3 nearby stars. Inside, thousands of seats rose in circles around a single platform at the bottom. Representatives from over 200 species filled those seats. Some had scales, some had wings, some had no bodies at all, just clouds of light held together by ancient technology. And at the very bottom, standing alone on that platform, with nothing but a microphone and her voice, was Yoon Hana. She was 43 years old. She had spent 20 of those years in the diplomatic service. She had learned 6 alien languages. She had memorized the customs of over 50 species. She had smiled when they insulted her, bowed when they ignored her, and waited patiently when they made her stand outside closed doors for hours. All of it, every handshake, every quiet swallowed insult, had led to this moment. Humanity's petition for a permanent seat on the inner circle of the Galactic Council. Hana took a breath and began to speak. She talked about what humanity had given. Medical technology that cured diseases on 12 different worlds. Engineering support during the Sarin Belt disaster. Military aid when the outer colonies of the Talari species were attacked by raiders. She listed facts. She listed numbers. She listed the names of human soldiers who had died defending alien worlds they had never even visited before. The hall was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that meant they were listening. The kind of quiet that meant they had already decided. Prelate Omen raised one of his 4 hands. Hana stopped mid-sentence. Omen was old, even by the standards of his species. His skin was the color of wet stone, and his eyes were completely black. No white, no color. He was the head of the Galactic Council, and he had held that position for over 100 years. He did not like humans. He had never liked humans. And today, he was going to make sure the entire galaxy knew it. "The vote has been taken," Amen said. His voice was deep and slow, like rocks grinding together. Hana blinked. "The vote was scheduled for after my address. The council moved it forward. The result is final." Hana felt something cold settle in her chest. She had expected rejection. She had prepared for it. But there was something in Amen's tone, something worse than a simple no. "Humanity is not being granted a seat on the inner circle," Amen continued. "Furthermore, by a majority vote of 162 to 38, the Council has decided to revoke humanity's general membership entirely." The hall was still quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Even the alien delegates shifted uncomfortably. "You are being formally banished from all Council-affiliated space," Amen said. "You have 1 galactic cycle, approximately 3 of your Earth years, to withdraw all ships, colonies, and personnel from Council systems. Your trade agreements are dissolved. Your embassies will be closed. Your access to shared star maps is revoked." Hana stood perfectly still. Her hands did not shake. Her eyes did not water. She had trained herself for 20 years to show nothing, and right now, that training was the only thing holding her together. "On what grounds?" she asked. Her voice was calm. "Your species displays uncontrolled expansion tendencies," Amen said. "Your population growth, your territorial ambitions, and your military development have been identified as a long-term civilizational threat to the stability of the galaxy." "We have never attacked a council member," Hana said. And that was it. 2 words. Not yet. Hana was escorted from the platform by Delegate Vasho, a tall creature with silver skin and 6 fingers on each hand. He was the Council's chief enforcer, the one who carried out the decisions that no one else wanted to touch. He walked beside Hana through a long corridor toward the docking bay where her shuttle waited. They walked in silence for a long time. Then Vasho spoke. "I want you to understand," he said, This was not personal. Hana said nothing. Your kind was never meant to reach the stars, Vasho added. His tone was not cruel. It was almost sad, the way someone might speak to a child who had tried very hard, but simply was not good enough. Hana stopped walking. She turned and looked up at Vasho. He was almost twice her height. Remember you said that, she told him. Then she walked to her shuttle and did not look back. The broadcast reached Earth 7 minutes later. Every screen on every continent showed the same thing. Prelate Amon's face, his words, and the vote count. 162 to 38. Banished. In a room deep beneath the surface of Seoul, Supreme Commander Kang Do-hun watched the broadcast in silence. He was 51 years old, with short gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from the same stone as Amon's skin. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought in 3 border conflicts, led the defense of the Telos colony, and buried more friends than he could remember. Around him stood his war cabinet, 12 men and women who controlled every branch of humanity's military, intelligence, and industrial power. They watched the broadcast too. Some were angry. Some were shocked. One, Shin Yuri, the Fleet Admiral, simply crossed her arms and waited. When the broadcast ended, the room was silent. He stood very still for a long moment. Then he spoke. They just made the worst mistake in galactic history. He turned to Yuri. She met his eyes. She had known him for 20 years, and she had never seen that particular expression on his face. It was not anger. It was not sadness. It was something much worse. It was patience. The kind of patience that comes right before a storm. Assemble the full fleet command, Do-hun said. Cancel all leave. Recall every ship from Council space immediately. We are not waiting 3 years. And then? Yuri asked. Then we begin, Do-hun said. Not a retreat, not an exile, a beginning. He looked around the room at every face. They want us gone from their galaxy? Fine. We will build our own. And when we come back, and we will come back, they will not have the power to banish anyone ever again. No one in that room argued. They simply stood, saluted, and went to work. Across the planet, the news spread. And with it, something strange began to happen. There was no panic. There was no despair. There was anger, deep, quiet, burning anger. The kind that does not explode, the kind that builds. Humanity had been told it was not welcome among the stars. Humanity disagreed. H1, banished by the Galactic Council, humanity embraced conquest instead of loss. H2, Part 2, Exile and the Forge. The Outer Rim was where things went to die. That was what every species in the galaxy believed. Beyond the borders of Council space, past the last mapped trade routes and the final patrol stations, there was nothing but dead stars, broken planets, and endless cold. No one went there by choice. The radiation was too strong. The distances were too far. The silence was too heavy. Humanity was sent there like garbage thrown into a pit. Park Ji-nu stood on the bridge of the colony ship Dawnhammer and stared out at the blackness ahead. He was 36 years old, thin, with dark circles under his eyes and oil stains on his sleeves that never seemed to wash out. He was the lead engineer of Project Exodus, the massive operation to move every human colony, station, and outpost from Council space to the Outer Rim. It was the largest migration in human history, and it was a disaster. Ships broke down in transit. Supply lines were too long. People got sick from radiation they had never been exposed to before. Children cried on overcrowded transports. Old people died in rooms that were too cold because the heating systems were not designed for this part of space. Ji-nu fixed things. That was what he did. When a water recycler failed on Colony Ship 9, he redesigned it using parts from a broken navigation console. When the fuel processors on Station 12 ran dry, he invented a method to extract energy from the radiation that was killing everyone. When people said something was impossible, Jinnu would stare at them with his tired eyes and say, "Show me the problem." Then he would fix it. Within 2 years, the first permanent human colonies were established on worlds that the Council had labeled uninhabitable. Jinnu did not care about labels. And what worked was simple. Humans could survive anywhere if they were angry enough. While Jinnu built, Beck Sora watched. Sora was the director of intelligence. She was 40 years old, quiet, with a face that revealed nothing and eyes that saw everything. Before the banishment, she had been a mid-level analyst in Earth's intelligence service. Now she ran the entire operation, because the 3 people above her had resigned in despair, and she had simply stepped into the empty chair. She built her network the old way, with patience, money, and lies. She found alien merchants who still wanted to trade with humans secretly. She bribed dock workers on council stations. She placed agents, humans who looked like refugees, wanderers or traders, on dozens of worlds across council space. They sent information back through coded signals hidden in commercial transmissions. Within a year, Sora knew more about the council's military, politics, and internal disagreements than most council members did. She stored every piece of information. She organized it. She waited. "Information is ammunition," she told Dohun once, "and I am filling every room with it." Dohun, meanwhile, was reshaping humanity itself. He called it total civilizational mobilization. It was not a law. It was not an order. It was a philosophy. Every colony, every station, every factory, every school, everything was oriented toward a single purpose: strength. Not blind strength. Not the kind that breaks things for no reason. The kind that builds walls so thick that no one would ever dare try to tear them down. Children learned engineering alongside reading. Farmers grew food in soil they had created from rock dust and recycled waste. Factories ran 20 hours a day, producing ships, weapons, and tools. Scientists worked in labs carved into the hearts of dead moons. Everyone worked. Everyone contributed. No one complained, not because they were forced, but because they all remembered what Amen had said. They all remembered the vote, 162 to 38. That number was painted on walls, stitched into uniforms, carved into the hulls of ships. It was not a wound, it was fuel. In the 3rd year of exile, Jinnu made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the dead star fields of the Outer Rim, where ancient suns had collapsed billions of years ago, his mining teams found a material unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It was dark gray, almost black, with a faint shimmer that moved across its surface, like light on water. It was incredibly strong, stronger than any metal the Council used, and impossibly light. Jinnu tested it for weeks. He hit it with plasma. He dropped asteroids on it. It did not break. He called it void steel. It existed only in the Outer Rim, in the compressed remains of dead stars. The Council had never found it, because the Council had never come here. Why would they? There was nothing out here. Nothing except the material that would change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Jinnu built a refinery. Then he built 10 more. Within a year, void steel was being used for everything: ship armor, weapons, orbital defense platforms, even the walls of new colonies. Human ships that had once been fragile compared to Council vessels were now tougher than anything flying. Not everyone agreed with the direction humanity was taking. No Kyung was a former ambassador. He was 55 years old, well-spoken, and deeply afraid. He believed that Dohun was leading humanity toward a war it could not win. He spoke publicly, on broadcasts that reached every colony. "We should negotiate," Kyung said. "We should send envoys back to the Council, show them we are not a threat, earn our place back through peace." Dohun did not arrest him. He did not silence him. Instead, he called Kyung to his office and sat across from him at a simple metal table. "You want peace," Do-hun said. "It was not a question." "I want survival," Kyung replied. "Then go to the frontier," Do-hun said. "Go to Colony 14, on the edge of Korath Raider territory. Spend 1 year there. See what survival looks like when you have nothing and no one is coming to help you. Then come back and tell me about peace." Kyung went. He expected to prove Do-hun wrong. He expected to find frightened people who wanted diplomacy. Instead, he found people who had buried their children because medicine arrived too late. People who had fought off Korath Raider attacks with mining tools because they did not have enough weapons. People who had watched their homes burn and then built new ones the next morning without a single tear. These people did not want peace. They wanted to never be this vulnerable again. Kyung stayed at Colony 14. He did not go back. In the 5th year, Cho Taeho was given command of the first warship built entirely from void steel. It was called the Iron Crane. It was beautiful and terrifying, sleek, dark, and fast, with weapon systems that Jinwoo had personally designed. Taeho was 38, broad-shouldered with a calm voice and steady hands. He had been a ship captain before the banishment. Now he was something more. His first real test came when a Korath Dominion raiding fleet, 15 ships, crossed into human-claimed space. The Korath outnumbered him 3-1. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Korath weapons, designed to tear through Council standard armor, bounced off void steel like rain off stone. Taeho's ships moved faster, hit harder, and did not stop. When it was over, 12 Korath ships were destroyed and 3 had fled. Taeho's fleet suffered minor damage to 1 vessel. Word spread, not just among humans, among every species that had trade contacts, intelligence agents, or simply ears willing to listen. Something was happening in the Outer Rim. The species that had been thrown away was becoming something new, something dangerous. By the end of the 10th year, humanity controlled 47 star systems. They had a fleet of over 400 warships. They had technology that no one in the galaxy could match. They had colonies that were fortresses and factories that never slept. And they had not forgotten a single thing. Shin Yuri stood beside Do-hun on the observation deck of Forge Station, the massive military headquarters Jinwoo had built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. They looked out at the fleet, rows and rows of dark ships, void steel hulls catching the faint light of distant stars. "It is time," Yuri said quietly. Do-hun nodded. He had been waiting 10 years for someone to say those words. 10 years of building, preparing, and holding back the storm. "Yes," he said, "it is." The wolves had been forged in the dark. Now they were ready to return. Banished by the Galactic Council, humanity embraced conquest instead of loss. Part 3. The Wolves Return. The Korath Dominion did not ask for permission before they invaded. They did not send warnings. They did not make demands. They simply appeared. Thousands of warships, dark red and covered in spines, pouring through the borders of Council space like a flood breaking through a wall. The first system to fall was Talara Prime. The Talari were a peaceful species. They had long necks, soft voices, and a civilization built on art and music. They had voted against humanity's banishment, one of the 38. It did not save them. Korath ships burned their orbital stations in hours. Ground troops followed. The Talari government sent out a distress signal to the Council. The Council received the signal. Prelate Amin called an emergency session. Delegates argued for 6 days. They formed a committee. The committee formed a subcommittee. The subcommittee requested additional data. By the time they agreed to send a response fleet, 4 more systems had fallen. The Council fleet, assembled from the navies of a dozen species, met the Korath at the Sarvan Belt. It was supposed to be a decisive battle. It lasted 3 hours. The Council fleet was scattered. Their weapons were outdated. Their tactics were slow. Their commanders had not fought a real war in over a century. The Korath advanced further. Panic spread across Council space. 3,000 light-years away, in the Outer Rim, Bake Sora sat in her intelligence center, a dark room filled with glowing screens and the quiet hum of communication equipment, and watched it all happen. She had known about the Korath invasion plans for months. Her agents on 3 different worlds had picked up the signals, fleet movements, supply buildups, coded transmissions between Korath warlords. She had tracked every ship, every route, every target. She brought the information to Do-hun. He sat in his command chair on Forge Station and read through her reports slowly, carefully, the way a man reads a menu when he already knows what he wants to order. How long before the Korath reached the Council's core systems? He asked. 8 months, Sora said. Maybe less. The Council cannot stop them. Do-hun set down the report. He looked up at her, and he smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but Sora had known him long enough to understand what it meant. It meant the moment he had been waiting for, the moment they had all been waiting for, had finally arrived. Call the War Cabinet, he said. They gathered within the hour. Do-hun stood at the head of the table. Around him sat the people who had spent 10 years building humanity's new civilization from nothing. Shin Yuri, calm and sharp as always. Cho Taeho, who had spent the last 5 years turning the Outer Rim patrols into the most experienced fighting force in the galaxy. Park Jinu, whose factories were now producing warships faster than any nation in Council history. Bake Sora, who knew every secret worth knowing. And Yoon Hana. Hana had changed in the years since the banishment. The young diplomat who had stood before the Grand Assembly with hope in her voice was gone. In her place was a woman who had spent a decade studying war, not how to fight it, but how to win everything that comes after it. She had written a document called The Doctrine of Controlled Expansion. It was simple. Humanity would not conquer blindly. They would take only what mattered. They would offer fair terms to anyone who surrendered. They would build loyalty through strength and fairness, not through fear. We do not want an empire of slaves, Hana had written. We want an empire of allies. Respect does not. Do-hun laid out the plan. The United Earth Fleet, 412 warships, all armored in void steel, all crewed by men and women who had spent 10 years training in the most dangerous region of the galaxy, would cross back into Council space. But they would not head for the Council capital. They would not make speeches or demands. They would go straight to the Korath front lines. We are going to do what the Council cannot, Do-hun said. We are going to stop the Korath. And when the galaxy sees what we have become, they will understand that the species they threw away is the only thing standing between them and destruction. No one objected. The fleet launched within the week. Cho Taeho led the vanguard aboard the Iron Crane. His squadron, 60 ships, was the tip of the spear. Behind him, the rest of the fleet followed in a formation that Yuri had designed. The ships moved together like a single organism, each one covering the others, each one ready to shift position in an instant. They entered Council space silently. No announcements, no broadcasts. The first sign that humanity had returned came when Taeho's squadron dropped out of faster-than-light travel, directly in front of a Korath armada that was attacking the Narvos Corridor, a major trade route that connected 6 Council systems. The Korath fleet was large, 120 ships. They had been destroying Council patrols for weeks and had met no real resistance. Their commander saw Taeho's 60 ships appear on his sensors and laughed. He ordered an immediate attack. The Battle of the Narvos Corridor lasted 40 minutes. Korath weapons, plasma cannons, kinetic rounds, and magnetic torpedoes designed to shatter Council standard armor hit the void steel hulls of Taeho's ships and did almost nothing. Small dents, scorch marks, nothing more. The Korath commander stopped laughing very quickly. Teho's ships fired back with weapons that Jinnu had designed specifically for this day. Focused energy beams that cut through Korath armor like sunlight through paper. Guided missiles that could change direction mid-flight, chasing targets around asteroids and debris. And the Iron Crane itself carried a weapon that had no official name. The crews just called it the Hammer. It was a concentrated gravity pulse that could crush a ship's hull from the inside out. Teho was calm throughout. He gave orders in a steady, quiet voice. He moved his ships with precision. When a Korath cruiser tried to flank him, he saw it coming 3 minutes before it happened, and had 2 ships waiting. When it was over, 96 Korath ships were destroyed. The remaining 24 fled. Teho's fleet lost 2 ships with all hands, and suffered moderate damage to 7 others. A 4% casualty rate against a force twice his size. Across Council space, the news spread like fire. The species that had been banished, the species that Prelate Amen had called a civilizational threat, had just saved an entire sector. Council citizens watched footage of the battle in stunned silence. They saw the dark void steel ships cutting through the Korath fleet with terrifying efficiency. They saw human ships shrugging off weapons that had been destroying Council vessels for weeks. And they were afraid, not of the Korath anymore, of humanity. Delegate Vasho, the same Vasho who had escorted Hana from the Grand Assembly 10 years ago, sent a private communication to her ship. The message was formal, careful, and dripping with desperation beneath its diplomatic language. The Council, he said, would like to discuss terms of readmittance. Hana read the message in her quarters. She sat alone at a small desk with a cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. She thought about standing on that platform. She thought about Vasho's words. Your kind was never meant to reach the stars. She thought about the 20 years she had spent bowing and smiling and being patient. She typed a one-line reply. We are not asking for admission. She sent it and went to bed. Behind the advancing fleet, a different kind of work was being done. No Kyun, the former ambassador who had spent years on the frontier colony and come back a changed man, led a diplomatic corps that followed in the wake of Teho's battles. But they were not talking to the Council. They were talking to the alien worlds that humanity was liberating from the Korath. Kyung would land on a freshly freed world, find whoever was in charge, and sit down with them. He did not make threats. He did not give speeches. He simply said, we came because we could help. We ask nothing in return except friendship. But if you want protection, if you want a place in something better than what the Council offered, we are building that. And you are welcome. It worked. Not because it was clever, because it was real. These species had begged the Council for help and received committees and debates. Then humans had appeared from nowhere and bled for them. 14 species formally pledged allegiance to humanity within the first 3 months. Not out of fear, out of gratitude, out of respect. The galaxy was shifting. The old order was cracking. And through the cracks, something new was rising. H1. Banished by the Galactic Council. Humanity embraced conquest instead of loss. H2. Part 4. The Council's Reckoning. H2. Prelate Amen had not slept in 4 days. He sat in his private chamber on the Council's capital station, surrounded by holographic displays showing maps, fleet movements, and reports. Every report said the same thing. Humanity was advancing. Not recklessly, not wildly, but with the slow, certain movement of a tide coming in. System after system was falling into their influence. Not through destruction, but through liberation and loyalty. Species that had been council members for centuries were now flying human flags beside their own. Amun's hands trembled, not from fear, from rage. He had banished humanity to protect the galaxy from exactly this. He had seen it coming, the ambition, the hunger, the refusal to know their place. And now, 10 years later, his worst fears were standing in front of him, wearing void steel armor, and smiling. He called an emergency session of the council. The Grand Assembly Hall, which had once held over 200 delegations, now felt half empty. Many species had already left, some to join humanity, some simply to hide and wait for the outcome. The ones who remained were the old guard, the species who had been in power for millennia, the ones who had voted yes to the banishment. "We must act," Ullman said. His voice was rougher than usual, tired at the edges. Humanity is not saving the galaxy, they are taking it. Every world they liberate becomes theirs. Every species they protect owes them loyalty. If we do not stop them now, there will be nothing left to stop. Delegate Vasho stood across from him. Vasho had been quiet in recent months. He had sent the message to Hana. He had received her one-line reply, but he was still a council officer, and he still had a duty. "What do you propose?" Vasho asked. "A combined council fleet," Omen said. "Every remaining navy, every ship we can gather. We meet them in open space, and we end this." The vote passed. Not unanimously, nothing was unanimous anymore, but with enough support to authorize the largest military mobilization in council history. 350 warships from 9 different species, assembled under a unified command structure, armed with the best weapons the council could provide. It took them 2 months to gather the fleet. It took Bakesora 2 days to know about it. She brought the council's complete battle plans to Dohun over breakfast. He was eating rice and dried fish in his quarters on Forge Station, reading a maintenance report about water recyclers. Sora placed a data tablet beside his bowl. Their formation, their approach route, their target coordinates, and the personal communication frequencies of every commanding officer, she said. Dohun picked up the tablet and glanced at it. He set it down and took another bite of rice. "Their lead admiral," he said. "What do we know about him?" "Admiral Voran, Palathi species," Sora said. 212 years old. He won a border skirmish against pirates 80 years ago, and has not commanded a ship in combat since. Dohun nodded slowly. "Who is commanding their left flank?" "A committee." Dohun actually laughed at that. It was a short, dry sound. Then his face went serious again, and he called for Shin Yuri. Yuri arrived within minutes. She was already ahead of him. She had been planning for this moment for years, the moment when the council would stop watching and start fighting. She called it Operation Broken Crown. "We do not meet them head-on," Yuri explained, standing before the war cabinet with a holographic map of the sector floating in front of her. "That is what they expect, a big battle, ship against ship. They have numbers, not as many as us, but enough to make a direct fight costly. We do not need a costly fight. We need a lesson." She outlined the plan. Humanity would let the council fleet advance into a region called the Pale Reach, a wide, empty stretch of space between 2 nebulae. It looked like open ground. It was actually a trap that Jinnu had spent months building. Park Jinnu had constructed hidden jump relay stations throughout the Pale Reach. These were small, undetectable platforms that could redirect faster than light travel. A ship entering one relay could exit from another, anywhere in the sector, instantly. The council fleet would fly into the Pale Reach, expecting to find the human fleet ahead of them. Instead, they would find nothing. And then, from every direction, above, below, behind, and from angles that should have been impossible, human ships would appear. The council fleet arrived at the Pale Reach on a Tuesday. Admiral Voran stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel called the Sovereign Light, and scanned the space ahead. His sensors showed nothing. No human ships, No defenses, just empty space. They are retreating, Vorin announced to his officers. His voice was pleased, almost relieved. They know they cannot face us directly. Continue advance. The fleet moved forward, 350 ships in a wide formation, spreading out across the pale reach like a net being cast. Cho Taeho was waiting. He sat in his command chair on the iron crane, watching the council fleet on his sensors. His squadron was hidden behind a dead moon 3 light minutes away, invisible to council scanning technology. Around the pale reach, in positions that formed a perfect circle, 200 more human ships waited at relay stations. They are at the center point, his tactical officer reported. Taeho nodded. Send the signal. Every human ship jumped at once. The council fleet's sensors screamed. Warnings lit up across every bridge in the formation. Ships were appearing from everywhere, from behind, from the sides, from below, from positions that had shown completely empty seconds before. The human fleet materialized around the council fleet like a fist closing. Vorin stared at his display. His formation was surrounded. Completely, perfectly surrounded. Human ships held every exit route. Every escape vector was blocked. He had walked his entire fleet into a box, and someone had just closed the lid. Yuri's voice came across an open channel. She spoke calmly, clearly, in the formal diplomatic language of the council. This is Fleet Admiral Shin Yuri of the United Earth Fleet. You are surrounded. Your escape routes are closed. Your communications are being jammed. You have one opportunity to power down your weapons and surrender your fleet. Take it. There was silence across the council fleet for a long, terrible moment. Then Admiral Vorin did something that surprised everyone. He surrendered. Not all at once. He argued with himself for about 3 minutes, staring at his display, counting the ships around him, calculating odds that all came back to 0. Then he gave the order. Weapons powered down. Shields lowered. Most of the fleet followed. 312 ships surrendered without firing a shot. But not everyone. 38 ships, the number was not lost on anyone. Their captains were hardliners, loyalists to Omen, who would rather die than submit to the species they had banished. They broke formation and tried to fight their way out. Taeho handled it personally. The iron crane moved to intercept. His weapons targeted engines, communications arrays, and weapon systems. Never the hull, never the crew sections. Dohun's standing order echoed in every human captain's ears. We are not butchers, we are builders. It took 20 minutes to disable all 38 ships. No one was killed. Every crew was taken alive. Among the captured vessels was the Sovereign Light, Prelate Omen's personal flagship. He had been aboard the entire time, watching from a private observation room, convinced that his fleet would crush the humans. When human marines boarded his ship, they found him sitting in a chair, staring at nothing, his 4 hands folded in his lap. Dohun came to see him. He walked through the corridors of the Sovereign Light, a ship decorated in gold and white, filled with art and symbols of council authority, and entered Amen's chamber alone. Amen looked up at him. The alien's black eyes were empty. Not angry, not defiant, just empty. What do you want from us? Amen asked. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Dohun stood in front of him. He did not sit down. He did not raise his voice. Everything you told us we could not have, Dohun said. Amen closed his eyes. He had no response to give. The news of the Pale Reach spread across the galaxy within hours. The Council's greatest fleet, assembled to stop humanity, had been surrounded and captured, without a single human ship lost. The old order had not just been defeated, it had been made irrelevant. Yoon Hana stood on the bridge of her ship and recorded a broadcast. It went out on every galactic channel. Council frequencies independent stations, pirate networks, everything. Every species with a receiver heard her voice. The Galactic Council banished us because they feared what we might become, she said. Her voice was steady and clear. They were right to be afraid. But we did not come back for revenge. We came back because the galaxy needs what we are. We came back because someone had to, and we were the only ones strong enough to do it. Behind the fleet, No Kung worked faster than ever. Former council species were given a choice. Join humanity's growing coalition as equal partners with full representation, or remain independent with no obligations. There were no threats, no ultimatums, just an open hand. Most species took the hand, because for the first time in galactic history, someone was offering them something the Council never had. Banished by the Galactic Council, humanity embraced conquest instead of loss. Part 5. The New Order. The Galactic Council died on a quiet morning. There was no explosion, no final battle, no dramatic last stand. Kang Do-hoon simply walked into the Grand Assembly Hall, the same hall where Yoon Hana had been humiliated 12 years ago, and stood on the same platform where she had stood. The seats around him were mostly empty now. The delegations that remained watched in silence as Do-hoon spoke 3 sentences. The Galactic Council failed the galaxy it claimed to protect. It is dissolved as of this moment. Something better will take its place. He turned and walked out. Behind him, the lights of the Grand Assembly Hall dimmed for the last time. Maintenance crews would later remove the seats, the banners, and the symbols of authority. The station itself would be converted into a hospital. Do-hoon thought that was fitting. A place that had once been used to judge others would now be used to heal them. The something better came 2 weeks later. Do-hoon called it the Stellar Compact. It was not an empire, it was not a council. It was something new, a governing body where every species had representation based on what they contributed, not how long they had existed. Old species with ancient histories but small populations had the same voice as young species with billions of citizens. Military powers had the same standing as species known for art or science. Everyone mattered. Everyone counted. The one rule was simple: contribute what you can, take what you need, and never leave anyone behind. Yoon Hana was named the first speaker of the compact. She stood before the new assembly, held in a different station, a new one that Jinnu had built in neutral space, and looked out at the representatives of over 150 species. Some she had never seen before. Alien faces of every shape and color, watching her with expressions that ranged from hope to fear to cautious curiosity. She took a breath and thought about the last time she had stood on a platform like this. She thought about Prelate Ullman cutting her off. She thought about the long walk with Vasho. She thought about his words. 12 years ago, Hana began, I stood in a room like this one and was told that my species was never meant to reach the stars. The assembly was silent. The being who said those words believed he was stating a fact. He believed that some species are meant to lead and others are meant to follow, and that the universe sorts them accordingly. He was wrong. The universe does not sort anything. It does not care who leads and who follows. It only cares about what you do when everything is taken from you. She paused. Her voice was calm, but there was weight behind every word. The weight of 12 years, of exile, of loss, of building something from nothing. When everything was taken from us, we built. We did not beg. We did not hide. We built. And now we are here, not to rule over you, but to build with you. The Stellar Compact is not a human empire. It is a promise. A promise that no species will ever be banished again, that no voice will ever be silenced, because someone else decided it was not important enough to be heard. She looked directly at the spot where the Tellarite delegation sat, the species that had been among the first to suffer when the Korath invaded, and among the first to join humanity's coalition. "They told me we were never meant to reach the stars," Hana said. "They were wrong. We were meant to lead them." The hall erupted, not in argument, in applause. The sound was strange. 100 different species expressing approval in 100 different ways. Clapping, humming, flashing lights, stamping feet, clicking mandibles. It was messy and chaotic and beautiful. In the weeks that followed, the compact took shape. Park Ji-nu launched the Open Forge initiative. It was his life's work made public. Void steel refining technology, radiation shielding, advanced energy systems, construction techniques developed during the desperate years of exile. All of it shared freely with every compact member. Former enemies became industrial partners. Species that had voted to banish humanity were now building ships alongside human engineers. Ji-nu did not care about politics or grudges. He cared about solving problems. And the galaxy had plenty of problems to solve. "Knowledge locked in a vault is useless," he told his team on the first day of the initiative. "Knowledge shared is a foundation. Build on it." Bake Sora did what everyone expected. She held a public ceremony where she formally dismantled her intelligence network. Agents were recalled. Spy equipment was decommissioned. Files were sealed. It was a grand gesture of trust and transparency. It was also, as Do-hoon knew perfectly well, only half true. Sora maintained a smaller, quieter network. A few dozen agents, carefully selected, monitoring threats that the Compact's open diplomacy might miss. Criminal organizations, remnants of the Korath Dominion, and any species that might decide the new order was a weakness to be exploited. She visited Do-hoon one evening and told him directly. She never lied to him. "Trust but verify," she said. "Always." Do-hoon nodded. He had expected nothing less. Cho Taeho was promoted to Fleet Marshal, the highest military rank in the Compact. The Iron Crane became the flagship of the Compact Defense Fleet. Its dark hull now bearing the symbols of every species that had pledged to the new alliance. Taeho did not rest. The Korath Dominion was broken, but not destroyed. Warlord Dren still controlled a dozen systems in the far reaches of the galaxy, and enslaved species still suffered under his rule. Taeho took the fleet into Korath territory. It was not a war of conquest. It was a war of liberation. Every system they entered, the pattern was the same. Defeat the Korath garrison, free the enslaved populations, offer them a place in the Compact or independence if they preferred. Warlord Dren was captured on his throne world after a battle that lasted 6 hours. He was a massive creature, 3 meters tall, armored in natural bone plates, with teeth designed for tearing. He fought until his personal guard was overwhelmed, then surrendered with a snarl of contempt. He was tried before a multi-species tribunal, the first of its kind. Judges from 12 different species heard evidence from hundreds of witnesses. Species that had been enslaved for generations finally had the chance to speak. Dren was found guilty and imprisoned on a station in deep space, where he would live out his remaining years in a cell with no windows and no visitors. Taeho watched the trial from the back of the room. He did not speak. He had done his part. No Kyung became the Compact's chief mediator. It was a role that suited him perfectly. The man who had once argued against Do-hoon's military path now served as the bridge between humanity and dozens of alien civilizations. His years on the frontier, living among people who had nothing and fought for everything, had given him something that no diplomatic training could provide: understanding. He understood fear. He understood pride. He understood the terror of being small in a galaxy that did not care about you. And he used that understanding to resolve disputes, calm tensions, and build connections that held the Compact together during its fragile early years. When someone asked him how he had changed so much from the man who once demanded peace at any cost, Kung smiled. "I still want peace," he said. "I just understand now that peace is not given, it is built, and sometimes you have to clear the ground before you can build." 1 year after the compact was established, Delegate Vasho requested a private audience with Hana. He was old now. His silver skin had dulled to gray. His six-fingered hands shook slightly. He had lost his position, his authority, and the world he had known for his entire life. He was nobody, and he had asked to see the most powerful woman in the galaxy. Hana agreed. She met him in a small room on the compact station. No guards, no cameras, just two people and a table between them. Vasho sat across from her and was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. "I am sorry," he said. "Not for the council, not for the vote, for what I said to you, in the corridor, that day." Hana looked at him. She remembered the corridor. She remembered every step. "You gave us the greatest gift anyone ever could," she said. Vasho frowned. "I gave you nothing." "You gave us a reason," Hana said, "a reason to prove you wrong, a reason to become what we are. Without your words, without the banishment, humanity might have stayed small forever, comfortable, safe, ordinary." She paused. "You made us extraordinary. Not because you believed in us, because you didn't." Vasho stared at her. His eyes were wet. He nodded once, slowly, and stood. He left the room without another word. Hana watched him go and felt something she had not expected. Gratitude. 6 months later, Kang Do-hoon stepped down as Supreme Commander. The compact was stable. The Korath threat was ended. The new order was functioning. He had done what he set out to do, and he had no interest in holding power for its own sake. He retired to a small colony on the Outer Rim, one of the first worlds Jinnu had terraformed during the early days of exile. It was a quiet place, green hills, clean water, and a sky full of stars that Do-hoon could name by memory. She was young, ambitious, and she asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Are you proud of what humanity built?" Do-hoon sat on the porch of his small house and looked up at the sky for a long time. "We did not build an empire," he said. "We built an answer, and the galaxy finally heard it." The journalist waited for more, but there was nothing more. Do-hoon went inside and closed his door. He was done. Far away, on the Compact Academy station, where young cadets from every species trained together, a human girl stood in front of a holographic display of the galaxy. She was 17 years old. She had been born on a colony ship during the Exodus. She had never known council space. She had never known the old order. She only knew the world that Do-hoon and Hana and Jinnu and Sora and Taeho and Kyung had built for her. The display showed hundreds of systems marked in blue. Compact territory. It stretched across the galaxy like a web of light. An alien classmate, a young Talari with a long neck and curious eyes, looked at the display and then at her. "Is it true your species was once banished from the stars?" the Talari asked. The girl smiled. It was a small smile, but it carried the weight of 12 years of exile, 10 years of building, and one simple truth that the galaxy had learned the hard way. "We were," she said, "and then we came back." Outside the station windows, the stars burned on in silence. They did not care who reached them or who was sent away. They simply existed, waiting for whoever was brave enough, or stubborn enough, or angry enough to claim them. Humanity had been all three, and the galaxy would never forget it.